What is up, everybody? It is Ryan J. Downey with Knotfest, and I am here with the guitar legend, pioneer, and very much still currently extremely active. I'd say busier than ever. Dino Cazares of Fear Factory. What's going on, brother?
How's it going, man? Thank you for finally hosting me on Knotfest. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude, it's a long time coming. And at some point, after you get this tour out of the way, I got to have you on the disc dive, which is where we go over
Ooh.
every record in your discography. So that will be Fear
Oh my
Factory,
God.
Divine Heresy,
Well, how many hours do we
Maria.
have for that? How many hours do we?
Sometimes they go about 2 hours. We try to not, stay too long on each
Oh
record,
man,
especially somebody who's got a deep discography like you.
there's too
Well,
many stories around those records, making those records. It's a
I
lot of
know.
stories. So
Indeed. And a brand new chapter in your story, a new book begins
I think the
this
longest
week.
one I've ever done, the podcast is like 3 hours.
Wow. Well, this is the new book in your I was going to say it's a new chapter in your story, but you're starting a new book because you're going out with a new Fear Factory singer for the
Yes.
first time in history. And
Yes.
Fear Factory made a couple records without you. You made records without Raymond, but this is the first time someone else has been behind the mic. And I want to say before we even dive any further into it, I have so much respect for the time and care and consideration that you put into the decision. And that it wasn't just like, all right, Bert's out, this guy's in, back on the road. Like you could have done that. A lot of bands do, and sometimes even just the necessities of having to keep it going and whatever. But I love that you really took your time and made sure you have the right person.
Well, obviously one of the things that did help me take my time was because of COVID. It all
Yeah.
happened during COVID. So, obviously we're in a lockdown and there was a lot of travel restrictions. And so I couldn't get people here to physically audition. So me and my manager at the time, Scott Koenig, rest in peace,
Rest in
we had to
peace.
sift, we have to sift through all those emails of people just sending in submissions. You know what I mean? And there was quite a few. And it was pretty tedious, but I took my time at the same time. And also, when the travel ban was lifted, I was out there touring with Soulfly. You know what I mean? I wanted to,
Yeah.
and it felt good to step away a little bit from Fear Factory to go out there and do something else. And plus, Max asked me, and I'm not going to say no. It's fucking Max. So I went out there and toured with Soulfly for a year and a half, and I had a blast.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, everything was handled. It wasn't my band. I was just coming in as a musician, and it felt good to take a back seat and not have to worry about all the responsibilities of running the band.
Mm-hmm.
But in that meantime, I was still looking at sifting through all those emails and going through all those videos, and there was a lot, man. I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot. I was really impressed by a lot of people.
And I know there were some great ones. Something I haven't really asked you about is, in American Idol and all those singing competitions, there's always the first couple episodes of just the train wrecks and the jokes. And without, you don't have to name names, obviously, but did you have some that were just like laughable and cringy?
Yeah, yeah, there was a couple that one guy farted in the microphone and said, "I'm your new singer," which I think that was the best one actually. That one
Yeah.
really made me laugh. And then there was another guy who was like singing in his kitchen, and he had like a little ghetto blaster with a mic plugged into it, singing over the track. And then you see his cat walk by. It's pretty funny, stuff like that.
Yeah. There's some comedy in the archives. And then I would imagine, and this is, I guess, kind of almost a philosophical question, but I would imagine that you had people hit you up. I think about actually like when Max left Sepultura, and then we find out years later that like, Chuck Billy was in the conversation at one point, and there were always rumors about Jason Newsted. And I talked to Igor about that once in recent years, and he said that was never really like a serious consideration. That was more something like the press came up with. But I would imagine it's Fear Factory. As soon as people knew that spot was open, you probably had people that maybe their bands broke up, but I'm sure there were some very established people that you could have chosen. And I'm curious what your thought process was about the pros and cons of like getting, a really known guy or girl from one of your peers kind of bands, and
There was
why you decided not to do that.
yeah, there was a few people that were definitely qualified for this position, but I was like, if I get a real established guy, that I thought that there would be cons to scheduling. because
Oh, sure.
so many people might not want to leave their band, or some of them might want to leave their band. I don't really know, and I didn't really get into all that stuff. But I did talk to a few people that were established singers in their bands, and some of them, were like, "I'll do it," but I got to stay in my other band too. And I was like, so I decided to go down the route that I've been to before and find that diamond in the rough, that one person who's very talented, who just never had that shot, and I wanted to give somebody else that shot. I mean, I've done it in the past. I've done it with my band Divine Heresy. You know what I mean? So I think you all know that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Covered some people.
so I decided to do that again, and I was like, and when I did that, I was like, wow, there's some really talented people out there. Again, it's like Star Search, it's like American Idol, it's like any of those singing contest shows type of thing. And I was really lucky that I found like at least 4 to 5 people that were highly in the running.
That's awesome. Yeah. And on the topic of like a really established person, I think one of the downsides to that, there's obviously upsides, but there's the scheduling, and then there's also the thing where that person can kind of overshadow the band, right? It's like Van Halen becomes Van Hagar because Sammy Hagar is like a very established person, and now it's almost like two things joining together, or like Audio Slave is like Rage plus Chris plus Soundgarden. Um, and I would imagine, with something like Fear Factory that also has this image and this story and these themes and everything behind it, to bring somebody else in who we know so well from something else, I think would probably be the wrong vibe.
Maybe, maybe, I don't know. But you know what? Those two other bands that you mentioned, Van Hagar and other bands have done it a million
Yeah.
times. And
Yeah.
I've always loved that, especially when Hagar came in. I mean, the band got huge after that.
Yeah.
Bigger.
And I mean, and I love Van Hagar, and I, no disrespect to the great Joey Belladonna, but John Bush is my favorite Anthrax singer. I had Sound of White Noise is my favorite Anthrax record. And
Well, come on. What about Neil Turbin?
yeah, that's the thing too. There's been like 5 Anthrax singers, and yeah, and then you find out like Halford's not even the first Priest singer, and
Yeah,
there's
well,
an AC/DC singer before Bon Scott, and yeah,
I can tell you that when me and Raymond linked up, he had another singer in mind, and the singer actually showed up to rehearsal. So Bert wasn't actually the first singer. You said that earlier, but he actually wasn't the first singer. It was a different guy.
wow.
But he only showed up to one practice and realized that it wasn't for him, and that was it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. It's sort of like when bands get inducted to the Rock Hall and they try to figure out like, well, who's who's in, who's out, what did they, who played on which record, who did how many shows, or however you have to like make those decisions. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is always interesting in the early days.
So that first singer turned out he turned out to be he didn't want to do it because he was making more money being a Chippendales dancer.
Good for him.
Yeah. His first name was Tyrone. I don't remember what his last name was, but
Chippendales. That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple singers that were in Megadeth early before Mustaine decided he would just sing. Yeah, there's a lot of those fun stories. Jerry Only, wasn't the first Misfits bass player.
Yeah, everybody goes through those periods, where you try to discover who the right combination is,
Yeah.
who's gonna fit, who's not going to fit. That's just sometimes it's a process. It's a growing process.
Yeah. So you did mention, one of the difficulties in getting someone who's in another band would be scheduling. And yet so far you've made it work with Tony being in the band. And obviously we have Static X and Fear Factory are going out on tour together.
Exactly.
But I guess that kind of solves that problem, right?
Well, I mean, that just means that we have to tour together forever.
Right.
But if Tony's doing Static X, that's obviously his band. So,
Yeah.
I would have to get somebody else to fill in for him.
Yeah, and a fill-in bass player is a lot. You can't really do a fill-in singer necessarily. So you got to have somebody where this is their thing.
I mean, people have done it many times with fill-in singers.
That's true. So when you were narrowing it down and you started getting an idea of a handful of people that it might be, where does the personality, the chemistry test, like where does that come in, right? Because a lot of bands, you form when you're super young, you have a few things in common, but you don't really get to know the people the way you really get to know them until the band's, you know, going. And some would say in some cases it's too late. But now you have an opportunity bringing in someone new. You kind of know, you know, is this person going to be going to hang? Is this someone who's going to be able to stand and deal with me? Let alone is this somebody that I can stand and deal with and whatever. And so, what was that part of the process like? Like, what were you looking for in terms of like just the
Well,
hang element?
well, obviously it's talent, it's personality, it's all the above. And you're not really gonna know somebody until you actually live with them for a little bit. And so every time he's come, he's pretty much stayed with me. Or he has some relatives here as well. But we spend a lot of time together, a lot of conversations. Uh, and we're yet to work in the studio together because we haven't done that yet. But he is very well versed in um, production because he's went to
Yeah,
school for that, so he knows all that stuff. So I'm not worried about that. And obviously, judging from a lot of the videos of him singing in a studio, obviously he knows what he's doing. So
yeah,
I'm not really worried about that. One of the things that took a long time was just getting his work visa.
mm,
It took a long time. There was a lot of delays because there's a lot of people trying to get out of their countries. Since the whole COVID thing, it pushed a
yeah.
lot of people back, and so just trying to get him here to get a work visa took a few months. So now that he's been here, we've just been prepared every day, getting ready for this tour. As soon as we're done touring, it's straight into the studio, getting a new
Nice.
track out, finishing the record because I have a lot of music already written for him to listen to and learn off of and write stuff to. And we're definitely gonna keep the legacy of what this band how this band started. Obviously, I've been in charge of the music for many many years. A lot of people think that other band members in the band were this creative force in the band, and a lot of times those dynamics wasn't always that way. A lot of times it was just me writing stuff and playing bass and music, and me and Raymond writing all the music and stuff like that in the early days. Christian didn't come till obsolete, where he actually put in a couple of things. So there was a lot of people always say, "Well, the early days, the four of you were the creative force." And like, no, it didn't exactly work out that way. Um, but later on, when I came back into the band, it was just me and Bert. Bert was just pretty much doing his vocals, and we were coming up with concepts together of what to write about, and the whole story of what it's going to be, and the whole sound of it and everything. But as far as the music, I've always handled it. So the music is pretty much going to be intact as it is. Conceptually, it's going to be the same way, and obviously, you people have heard Milo's voice, so it's going to be killer. And I can't wait to start getting in the studio with him to really start getting creative and start taking it to the next level.
Isn't that amazing? By the way, that this really speaks to the era that we live in now. You wouldn't have been able to find a relatively unknown person even 15 years ago, let alone 20 plus years ago, that has all this recording experience, right?
Yeah,
That's a very modern advantage, it seems like.
totally. And him and his dad run a studio in Rome, Italy. His parents are professional musicians, and so they're very well known out there and stuff like that. But yeah, he comes from a very musical background, which is way more talented than me in that aspect. He's dabbled in all different kinds of music and stuff like that. So I'll let you ask him his
Yeah,
story. But yeah, I found a diamond in the rough, and I was very happy about that.
that's killer. So at what point, because you can probably remember now, before you had even really made the decision 100%, at what point did you kind of know where you were like, oh, this is, I got to check out a few more people, but it's going to be this guy. Like when did you really start to get that feeling?
Well, the first time he came here to LA was probably roughly about a year ago, and I got to physically audition him in the studio, in our rehearsal studio. No effects and none of that stuff, just plugged
Yeah.
straight into the microphone. And I played him instrumental tracks, and he sang over them. That's pretty much what I was doing with people, playing them instrumental tracks, and then they had to sing over in front of me. You know what I mean? And he came here for a few days, but I was only going to audition him one day. I said, "Hey," after he did the first audition, I was like, "Wow." I go, "You want to come tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll come tomorrow." So he came the next day, and he did a few more songs. And I was like, "Holy shit!" And then I go, "Hey, you want to come again?" So he came again, and I kept playing him all these songs, and he just kept knowing them. I'm like, how the hell do you know all the lyrics to all these songs? Like,
Yeah.
we had a singer for 30 years and didn't know all the lyrics to all the songs, and that's no
And,
distance.
and no, that's no diss.
It's a
That's
lot of
most
songs.
bands. Yeah, that's most bands out there. You
Yeah,
know? Yeah,
and he just knew all that stuff, and he like, even like in the rehearsal studio, there was one song, because we've been obviously rehearsing for the past few weeks, and there was one note that I was playing wrong, and he's like, "Hey, Dino, like he didn't want to. Obviously, you could tell he didn't want to step on my
yeah.
shoes, right?" He's like, "Hey, Dino, I think you're a full step off there." I'm like, "Let me see." Oh, you're right. I was a full step off, and I was like, "Fuck, how does he know that?"
Yeah, that's amazing, especially for a lead singer, because we don't really associate, that side of being in a band with singers that often.
And then I told Tony, I go, "Tony, we were off the whole time." And Tony goes like, "I thought that's how you like to play it."
I thought you changed it live.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you changed it for live. I'm like, no, it was off. It was like a whole half step off. Like, what the hell's going on?
That's amazing. So yeah, I definitely want to bring him in here in a moment. Before we do that, I just want to ask you, I mean,
Hold,
go ahead.
before we go into the next thing, I wanted to say one of the things that delayed me announcing him as well was his visa. What happens if
Yeah.
we just couldn't get it? You
Oh,
know,
sure.
and I would
Yeah.
be, shit out of luck.
You make this big announcement and then nothing happens after the announcement. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't
That
going
would
to make
suck.
the announcement until he had his
Yeah.
visa. Like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I had some backup people in mind that I was going to use in case he didn't make it. You know what I mean? But luckily, we got it a while last year, and then I don't know, the media hype train just kept going, and you know, I was getting asked about it every day. A lot of people think that I created this, and it wasn't necessarily that way. People were just asking me every day about the new singer, and I was like, I couldn't give them an answer because there was a little bit of uncertainty of him
Yeah.
being able to get in this country.
Yeah.
So
And there's something to be said, honestly, for making an event out of the announcement. I mean, why not? You should
yeah,
have a little pomp and circumstance. It's a big deal. I mean, it's a face and voice for what has been your creative vehicle for most of your life, So
yeah. I just wanted to make
make a
sure.
moment out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect before I made any kind of an announcement.
So are there conversations about I mean, and I'll talk to him about this too,
Ask me whatever you want.
about like stage presence, right? Because it's a singer. So I mean, do you guys have conversations about like, what's this banter going to be like in between songs? Like I mean, just stuff like you don't know, you know what I mean? Like you haven't played
He,
together.
I think he's watched, thousands of hours of video of Fear Factory. He
Yeah,
knows what to say and what to do already. I mean, we do talk a little bit about it, but he pretty much already has it down.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, and as we're taping this, you are very close to playing together for the first time.
Yes.
Do you, despite the veteran that you are and all the different people you've played with in and out of Fear Factory, do you have any sort of like jitters or just like, that like excited anxiousness about it's kind of a first show in a
Yeah,
way?
I'm not really nervous, definitely for sure anxious and, excited. You know what I mean? Because I'm excited to everybody to see him, you know what I mean? And we've gotten pretty well positive responses, on the internet, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
But I think people are going to be excited to see him live. They want to see Fear Factory again, because we've been gone for the past 6 years. We haven't played a show. So coming back and hearing somebody who can, do a great job live, and they're going to be able to hear the songs as they're intended to be. It's gonna it's gonna sound like the classics, and that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. And that, I mean, and hey, the door was open there for a while. Eventually it had to close. And I think a great comparison is Journey, because, it's like Steve Perry just wasn't going to be there. And they got somebody who sounds great and nails it every night. And they go out and play the songs everybody loves to huge crowds. And then I think the difference here is that you are nowhere near as old as Journey. So you're still in
Yeah,
forward motion of like, you're going to come home and make a new album and the new stuff's going to continue. So
correct. Totally. And I'm excited for everybody to hear new stuff. I mean, the riffs and you know, all the music that I wrote for it's going to be killer. I can't wait to put his voice on top of it. It's going to be fucking amazing. And of course, you know, I have a great production team behind me. I got Damien right now. I got Reese Fulber
Yeah.
and Andy Sneap and people like that that are going to make this record sound like a fucking $1,000,000. I can't wait.
And people, Reese, obviously one of them, you know, people that have been with you like for basically since the beginning, you know, that are, whether people realize it, well, the real fans know, but you know, they're a big part of the sound and the vibe and everything too.
Yeah, and I think people are generally excited that you know the band gets to continue on, and we got you know we're giving somebody new a shot. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's an unknown guy. It's like cheering for the underdog. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think he's going to be welcomed with open arms. I've been very relieved and delighted to see how nice the mean internet has been the last couple of
Correct.
days.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You know, if we get anything thrown at us, you'll be the first guy I text.
Please do.
Hopefully, it's
Um,
a burrito or a taco.
well, dude, let's meet. Is it Milo or Milo?
You can. He likes either one. It's Milo, but he doesn't mind Milo. He actually, for some reason, he likes that because it's American, right, Milo?
Yeah.
Yeah, there
You know
go.
what? It's like a Mexican dude I know who's Jorge, but he likes people to call him George.
Yeah.
So I understand.
I got a good story about Jorge if you want to hear that one.
Always.
Hear that one?
I'm always down for a Dino story. Go.
So a friend of mine had this aunt, and she had this Mexican gardener that would come over all the time. And she goes, for some reason, he doesn't want to listen to me. She was complaining about the gardener not wanting to listen to her, trimming her bushes and whatever, right? And I, you know, and I go, really? Why? She goes, maybe you can tell him something in Spanish because he doesn't want to listen to me. And I go, what's his name? She goes, Jorge. I'm like,
That's probably
what?
why.
I go, what name? What name did you say? She goes, Jorge. I'm like, that's not his name. It's Jorge. She goes, whatever. I'm like, he doesn't want to listen to you because you're insulting him every day.
Yeah. He's probably trying to do the opposite of what you're asking him.
Exactly. He's like, what the hell is this lady saying? I'm gonna pretend like I don't understand her.
Brilliant.
All right.
Brilliant.
Here's Milo Silvestro,
The Italian Stallion.
the Italian style.
There you go. Hi,
Hey,
nice
man.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm
Hi,
Ryan.
Ryan. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude,
So-
it's my pleasure. And you know,
Hold on. Ryan pretty much knows everything there is to know about the band. He's been following us from day one, and
Cool.
he's been to many studios to come when we were writing records and recording records. He's been there many. He knows it all.
many studios, many shows. Although maybe not as much as you, because you are clearly well versed in the Fear Factory lore and catalog as well, which we're going to talk about here. The very first thing I want to ask you, and I apologize if you've been asked this because I haven't seen it. When and how did you first discover Fear Factory? Do you remember the first time you heard the band? Like, how old were you? Where were you? How did you find out about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a friend of mine who played drums in a band that I had at the time. I discovered them actually a little bit late, like 2007, I think it was. And he played me like a bunch of songs like Resurrection, Lynchpin, I believe. And I was impressed, but I needed some time to make it grow on me because it was so different and unique. I was like, oh, this is really different. And of course, at that point, I was a fan of metal since years. So, but yeah, that was the main, the very first time that I got into Fear Factory, and then it's snowballed into a huge passion. The next year, 2008, remember, I've been given the whole discography, and so I could actually check out albums, and see, check out songs. And I remember like Obsolete and Digimortal being my first favorite ones, pretty much still my favorite ones, but they were my first favorite albums of Fear Factory, and and then snowballed into discovering other albums, and eventually got to see them live. And the first time I saw them live was like, okay, I fucking love this. I want to fucking fucking do this music, sing like this and whatever. So
Yeah, that's killer. I know you said you got into them a little late, but that's a really good year to get into them because, as you said, you were able to then go back and into that discography. You know, there was a lot of music, a lot of eras, a lot of
yeah,
different shades of Fear Factory for you to discover all at once. That's awesome.
yeah, exactly. And also, you know, being able to get into even more extreme music, like, you know, Soul of a New Machine, which was almost like death metal grindcore kind of music. So at first I was a lot into more groovy kind of music, like Korn, Pantera, you know, and Static X, Cold Chamber. So Fear Factory, I think they were one of the first bands to get me into more extreme sound, you know. And Soul of a New Machine at first was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, it's raw. The recording is really raw, you know, and it was really weird at first listening, but then, you know, it grew up on me and to that fucking love it. You know, it's like, it's got like a fucking dark vibe, industrial dark vibe. And so, yeah, it's been really, you know, it opened the gate for me to a lot of other more extreme metal subgenres.
Yeah, they're a great gateway band. You know, there's a handful of bands that are great that way, that they can hook you in from, you can be into totally different styles and then you get into this one band and then it opens up a whole world of other bands to discover. So I know I saw you say in an interview that you know, people, when people ask you like, you know, oh, this must be your dream, and you're like, it wasn't even my dream. I didn't think this was like even imaginable.
Exactly.
At what point in the process did it start to feel like, oh, this might actually happen? I might have a shot at this. Do you remember what walk me through even just how you got connected originally?
Well, I think it all started. Okay, it started in 2020. Like January 2020, I posted it on YouTube. Cover Soul of the Machine songs. It was like a medley, and just, you know, posted on Facebook just to get some people to see it. You know, but I didn't know that Dino was on that Facebook page where I posted the cover. And so he started complimenting me. I was like, oh, this is fucking amazing, blah, blah, blah. Then the pandemic kicked in Europe. You know, we had it even before than you.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, Italy was the first country I remember hearing about
yeah,
COVID being
yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
Italy was very hardcore. So, and February was totally, you know, from like from night to day, it was like, okay, so since tomorrow, you know, you guys stay in your fucking house locked in. And, you know, that was really, you know, shocking. And so the lockdown kicked in. And so I, you know, like many other people, musicians, you know, started doing things to kill some boredom, and started doing more covers. You know, like, okay, so Dino liked my covers, so maybe I do more covers. And but at that time, I didn't even know that he was looking for a vocalist or auditioning, or, you know, it was just cool to have the actual man liking my stuff. You know, and
Yeah.
that it. So I did another cover, Resurrection and Timelessness, both together, and he complimented me again. And the next day, he messaged me on Facebook, and I was really shocked. And it was like, this can't be true. I mean, he's really doing this. So, and he started asking me questions like, you know, how old are you? You know, are you a producer? Because, you know, I like how it sounds, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, yeah, I have a studio. And so he asked me to do more covers. You know, he sent me instrumentals of Lynchpin or Dielectric, you know, Final Exit, few songs.
And what's going through your head at this point when he's like, when he's sending you instrumentals? Like, are you starting to think like, wait a second, you know, does he just want some more cool covers on the internet, or wait a minute, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was like, just like this, and I was like, what's going on? You know, what's, and I remember some friends of mine, they were like, you know, oh, come on, man, he's auditioning you. It's clear. And I was like, you know, how is that possible? I mean, but, you know, it was really, I didn't even know that, you know, I mean, I knew that they were going through a legal suit and stuff, but didn't even know that I could run for the spot of Fear Factory singer.
Right.
Until that point, that wasn't even in my, you know, most remote dreams, you know. So I was like, okay, let's see what's the deal. And then Dino told me later on that he was trying to do a solo project to tour with it and work with it, because his main business, Fear Factory, was held down by the legal suit. So he was auditioning singers for the solo project. But then, you know, as you probably know, on June 2020, he gained back control of the band, blah, blah, blah. And September 2020, Bert quit the band. So actually, you know, he then wanted to bring Fear Factory back. And there wasn't any, you know, sense, didn't make any sense to bring on the solo project. So it was like, he texted me like 4 days later, the announcement of the singer Bert leaving the band, and it was like, now I'm gonna have audition for Fear Factory singer. Do you still want to try? And I was like, what? Like, you know, I never thought it could happen. You know, it wasn't even a dream.
Yeah, and you kind of had a head start on some of the other candidates because you were already talking to him about doing something, maybe, right? And then when he's like, okay, I'm definitely auditioning for Fear Factory, like you'd almost sort of already been in the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. What were your conversations with your friends and family and stuff at home when it started ramping up? Like, hey, I might be joining Fear Factory.
Yeah.
What are those conversations like?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, the funny story is that when he told me, oh, I'm gonna audition singers for the solo project, and I was like, you know, I told my parents I was so enthusiastic because they knew that I was a huge fan of the band. You know, I saw them live twice and blah blah blah. You know, I was busting everybody's balls with Fear Factory. You know, check out this band. And so my parents knew them very well, and I remember my dad telling me, maybe he's auditioning you for Fear Factory. I was like, come on, that can't be true. Now here we go.
Yeah, dude, so killer. And there, you know, and there are some examples in rock and metal history where, you know, sometimes it's the drum tech who becomes the drummer, or you know, the person from the side project ends up in the main band, and you never know. You know, it's just about like doing the work and having the chops. So if you do get that call, that you're ready for it. Yeah. So what was that first trip here like? And had you been to the States before, or was this your first time here coming over to play with Dino?
It was the very first time in the States, and
wow. So you've got all that going in your head too.
Yeah. I mean, I had a long flight like 10 years ago. I've been in Brazil, but you know, this was my very first time in the US, and you know, of course I was so happy about it. And fortunately enough, I have my, you know, wonderful relatives here. They live here in LA, and so they accommodated me, and you know, they were so, you know, really nice to drive me to the rehearsal space and stuff. So I was able to, you know, go here for the physical edition, but it wasn't until November 8th, 2021, because that was the day when the travel ban was lifted, because you guys in America had the travel ban during COVID.
Yeah. So
and I was so scared that the COVID situation could you know, destroy and fuck up this huge hand. You know, I was really scared. But then, you know, eventually we made it, and yeah, it was, you know, felt amazing, you know, being here, meeting Dino, even though I met him before the shows, you know, when I was just a fan, you know, but you know, actually meeting him as a colleague, bandmates, whatever, you know, it's just surreal, you know. Yeah. So yeah, very first time, it was amazing. It was really surreal. Yeah, pretty much surreal.
One thing that I think people who haven't performed or done public speaking or anything like that before don't necessarily understand is it's a lot easier, I think, and I think a lot of people would agree who've done it. It's a lot easier to get up in front of 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people than it is to get up in front of like 2 or 3 people. You know, like there's just something about like the bigger the crowd is, the more it's just sort of like it's just a wall of you know, it's just like this
Yeah.
big mass or whatever, and you can just sort of not get psyched out about it. But when it's just a couple of people, you know, that's when you can get really nervous. So you're sitting down, you know, there's no studio effects, there's no gimmicks, there's no tricks. It's just your voice, it's just you, and you're sitting there across from Dino
Yeah.
performing for an audience of one.
Yeah.
What is that like? Like what that just had to be the craziest mind trip. And how did you get yourself through it basically? Like how are you not just like collapsing into a bundle of nerves?
Okay, I remember the very first day I was actually, you know, nervous to, you know, big time nervous, and like I was quivering and shit, you know, I was trying to hold it, you know, like trying to look like it was all okay, you know, I had situation under control, but the truth was that it was really nervous, you know, and it was normal because I mean, Dino has been one of my music idols since forever. I mean, so it's really, you know, a very huge thing. So I remember in the first two songs that I sung, I was like a little bit nervous. So I, you know, remember that feeling. But then later on, you know, starting from the third and fourth song, you know, so on and so on, I, you know, felt more and more comfortable, you know, and eventually got over it. And so yeah, at first it was, you know, fucking nervous, you know, but then fortunately I could handle it. And you know, since the second day was like we've been working together since forever. So
Yeah. How did it feel when he asked you to stay for that second day? I mean, that had to be a very positive sign along the way, right? Like,
yeah, you know,
oh,
it was,
come back tomorrow? Okay.
yeah, I was
this
like,
must
okay,
have gone well.
exactly, you know, I expected him to go like, you know, okay, so this is one day of you know, audition. Okay, now go back to your relative's house. I'll let you know, and blah blah blah. You know, and I thought it would have been like that, but actually he gave me the second call. You know, and it was cheering with my family here in Los Angeles. It was like, oh, I gave you the second call. So yeah, it was amazing. You know, and actually since the very first day, I remember that he went like, you know, we walked away from the rehearsal space. While walking, he was like, oh, you know what, you know, I think I can work with you, you know, so now I think I have to figure out the beats and all that stuff. And I was thinking, are you saying to me that I'm fucking in? Because, you know, it's wow.
You're like, wait, was that it? Was that the moment? Did I just miss it?
Yeah,
Am I in the band?
exactly.
That's awesome.
Great.
That's awesome. And that's how you want it to be, because then it starts to adjust to like, all right, this is real life. This is my life now. You
Yeah.
know, that's great. So getting ready to play on stage for the first time. And I want to talk about the fact that you guys are going to be making new music sooner rather than later, but of, you know, putting together the set list, even, you know, your first show, first tour, like what the songs are going to be and all that sort of thing. Were there songs that you were pushing for? Like, did you have any like, oh, we're definitely going to play this one, right? Like, are there like really specific songs that you're most excited about getting out there and doing?
Well, fortunately enough, some of my favorite Fear Factory songs ever are going to be in the set list for this tour, the Static X tour, which are maybe most likely Dielectric, one of my favorite songs ever, Shock, Edge Crusher, what else? Yeah, Power Shifter for sure. So yeah, I mean, most like Zero Signal, one of my favorite songs. We're gonna play it.
Yeah.
Is by now we count it as an extra song, so we're most likely toss them in the set list and swap it with other songs.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, most like, you know, as far as I remember, Dino got me a set list and he was like, okay, so these are the songs we should play. We thought about it because on the Static X tour we're opening, so we got just 14 minutes, and so we actually tried to you know, make them fit and do a set list that fit in that range.
That 40 minutes is like, we got to do a greatest hits basically.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
Yeah.
because there's certain songs where people are gonna be pissed if they don't hear them. You know, you don't want to
Yeah.
go see Slayer and not hear Angel of Death. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this tour, it's all it's gonna be all about the hits, for obvious reason. But we're gonna get into more deep cuts on, I think, the headliner tours we're gonna do later on June, on October, European tour and stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be even more awesome because some of my favorite songs are deep cuts.
Yeah. How has the reaction been? Because I know there was, I'm sure Dino gave you advice about internet warriors and trolls and all that, but I have to say, from me, I've been very excited about the announcement. I've been following it. I've been very relieved and like optimistic and happy about how warm the reception has been. Like
Yeah.
I keep seeing just positivity, people responding to, and people sharing your videos, and there's, I was on the Fear Factory Reddit thread, like, and people are pumped. Normally the kind of people that, it seems like people usually only log on to talk shit, but people are logging on to say they're excited, and you're getting the blessing from people. How does that feel? What's your, or how do you even deal with that? Or are you tuning it out? Or
I mean, of course, as you mentioned, Dino was since the audition days, since I was here for the audition, he was like, dude, get prepared, it's gonna be a fucking shitstorm, in both good and bad way, so people are gonna hate, some of them are gonna, and it's comprehensible because you got like a 30 years legacy of the, of iconic singers. So I mean, it's really comprehensible to me. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, my name has been leaking even before the actual announcement. It's been leaking since at least 1.5 years until now. So and people tried, started speculating, oh, it might be that guy, and the majority of them, fortunately, were positive about it. But there were still, some haters, some people go like, I don't like him. Some people go like, fuck that Italian spaghetti eater, fuck that shit. He's fucking hardcore, but she's clean vocals are shit and stuff like that. So I was actually worried, like you mentioned, I was actually worried, and for about the backlash and the hating, the trolls and whatever. And of course, Dino did a very good thing to warn me and prepare me. But the truth is, as you mentioned, it was like almost 100% positive comments, really loving comments, like welcome to the family, bro, and I can't wait to hear you live and stuff like that. So I was really impressed by how many positive comments I got, so I'm really thankful for that, because you can really feel the love and the support of these people. It's like,
yeah,
I've seen maybe one out of like 1 billion positive comments, I've seen like 1, maybe 2 negative, but I can take it.
that's an amazing ratio for the internet.
Yeah.
And
I'm impressed.
and I heard something really great on a podcast the other day. It was Neil Brennan and Charlemagne the God were talking, and Charlemagne said that his father would tell him, you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's probably a good rule for all of us when we're thinking about internet comments. It's like the people that are like, you're the best ever. It's like, okay, settle down. And people are like, you're the worst ever. It's like, well, that's not true. So it's somewhere in there.
Somewhere in between. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably just a better, more balanced way of looking at life. So I want to ask you, as the last big topic here, I mean, how excited are you to get in there and dig into these new riffs and these new songs that Dino's been putting together, and putting your name literally and figuratively on a Fear Factory record down the road? Because that's the thing is, there's a lot of bands, when they change frontmen, sometimes they're like a legacy act and there's not really much in new music coming, but this is still a band that has a lot of years ahead of it and an opportunity to continue to be relevant, continue to make new albums, roll into a new era, like we've seen with Maiden, Kill Switch, Anthrax, you know, a lot of great bands we can name that successfully did this. Arch Enemy, you know, there's the list gets longer lately.
There is a band, actually, Dino was talking about that band. Of course, I knew some songs, but I didn't know the name. It was called Journey.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, of course,
That's the one I've been comparing it to the most, because it's like they found somebody from another country who's young and hungry and absolutely nails it. And it was like no beef. It was like, you know, the singer quit and he's not coming back. So people want to hear these songs, and then they go out and, you know, it's very comparable, except even better is that you're going to be focusing on new music at some point soon too.
Yeah.
How excited are you for that? And how are you preparing yourself for diving into that part of it?
Well, super excited. And describe, you know, I can't describe how excited I am about it, because it's really, you know, as I said before, it's really beyond the expectation. You know, my expectations were like, you know, maybe make a living out of, you know, my actual bands, you know, like kind of have some kind of success, you know, not because I want success, being famous and rich, but just, you know, because I want to make a living out of it. You know, I want to do this. Yeah, I mean, the feeling is surreal. I'm still realizing it, you know, the realization process still. So it's like it's like when you dream something that's real, that's so good, too good to be real, and then you wake up every day thinking, okay, it was just a dream. But no, I mean, it's kind of, you know, it kind of fucks with your mind, because it's too good to be real. I mean, so yeah, it's really surreal in a good way, you know.
Yeah. And on top of that, you know, we haven't even really talked about this part. Not only are you going out on your first tour as the new frontman for Fear Factory, but you're touring with Static X, and my homies in Twisted are playing some of those shows. And like, it's a stacked bill. You know, how do you do you even have a moment to even think about like, oh yeah, I'm going on tour with all these awesome bands too? Like, have you thought about that? And what's your vibe on just that whole tour package? I mean, it's stacked.
I'm a huge Static fan, man. I mean, I just saw them in Italy like 4 years ago for the Regeneration tour, and I was so happy that they got together again. And you know, now here I am, you know, singing for my favorite band and opening for another favorite band of mine. I mean,
yeah,
pretty much like all the bands on tour, you know, like
you're in your favorite band, and one of your bandmates is in one of your other favorite bands who you're also touring with.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like super full circle kind of thing, you know. It's really, yeah, you know, it couldn't be better. It couldn't be better than that, you know.
Yeah. Well, Milo, welcome from myself. I'm going to be the ambassador for all of us fans right now and say welcome into the Fear Factory family. And I'm so excited to get to see it live, and so excited that, you know, Dino, for all the hard work and effort and creativity he's put in the last 3 decades into this thing, that he gets an opportunity to go out there and live his legacy and keep this thing moving. And we get to hear all these killer songs the way they're meant to be heard, and get new Fear Factory records. It's all just a massive win in every direction for all of us. So very appreciative, and thanks for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a huge pleasure, you know, and thanks for the support. So